Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage A podcast. I'm Josh with my co-host Mike. We have a ton to cover today, starting with recapping week 2 of the college football season, recapping Monday Night Football, which we did not discuss in our recap episode that you can go check out right now if you haven't already. We updated you on every game from last week of the NFL season, recapped every one except for Monday Night Football, which we will do today after college football, and then we will end the episode with a preview for the entire week 2 of the NFL season. We're going to go game by game, pick a game on the betting line, as well as giving you our 3 best bets for the week at the end of the show. So stay tuned in for that. But Mike, do you want to get us started with college football?
Yeah, big game. Some big games this week. The biggest one being the SEC versus the Big Ten and Texas versus number 10 Michigan. Texas dominates this game pretty much from the beginning to the end. They got ahead early. Quinn Ewers looked phenomenal. He had 3 touchdowns and no picks. The Texas offense could really do pretty much anything they wanted almost on this Michigan defense, which was a shock considering Michigan was going into this game with a pretty highly thought of defense, but Texas looked great. And then defensively, Texas shut down Michigan's offense. Davis Warren really didn't have anything going at all. The Michigan offense was just a rough watch. They couldn't run the ball with Donovan Edwards. He did not look great at all. And just all around, Texas dominated them. Michigan looked like they maybe not even be a top 25 team. Texas looked like they are a very good team and will be in the college football playoff. But next game, the biggest shock of the week, being after going into Texas A&M and beating them, Notre Dame gets their first home game of the season and loses to Northern Illinois. Riley Leonard did not look good in this game at all. No touchdowns, 2 picks, only 163 passing yards. The Notre Dame offense was not good in this one. Northern Illinois came out and they beat them. They were the better team. They hit a field goal late to win the game. Just an embarrassing performance from Marcus Freeman and his Fighting Irish. You've had everything going for you right now. You have the expanded playoff. You're looking great. You had the big win on the road. They just needed to get the jobs done, and here they just fall and trip and lose to a Northern Illinois team they should have beat by at least 20 points. I think they were like 20-point favorites going into the game, 28.5-point favorites. So just an embarrassing loss for Notre Dame. Can't have that. My favorite game of the week next here in Boise State versus Oregon. This game was electric. It was the late night game. Oregon was behind. They really almost didn't deserve to win this game. They have a punt return touchdown, a kick return touchdown. Dylan Gabriel didn't look great. But for Boise State, Ashton Genty looked like a Heisman candidate. He continues. He had a phenomenal week last week. I think he had 5 touchdowns. This week he might have had 6 last week. He had 3 touchdowns this week, 192 yards on the ground, had a 70-yard touchdown. He looked phenomenal. I'd say he has to be the leader for Heisman right now. I think he has 9 total touchdowns and like 400, 500 total yards. It's ridiculous. He has been phenomenal. But for Oregon, 2 games this year now where you barely won the games. You struggled with Idaho last week. This week with Boise State. I think Boise State's going to be a good football team, but for Oregon, they need to be better. They're going to go in and have a tough Big Ten schedule here soon. And this was one that was a little too close for comfort. You get the field goal late, though, to win it. That's all you really needed, but got to be better. Last game I'll talk about here quickly is Tennessee and NC State. 2 ranked teams, number 14 versus number 24, and Tennessee really just dominates them all around. Nico Lama-Leva, I can't even remember how to say his name, but he was phenomenal. He was pretty good. 2 touchdowns, 211 passing yards. Tennessee dominated the game on the ground, 132 rushing yards for Dylan Sampson. And NC State just really couldn't get anything going on offense. Only 104 passing yards, 39 yards on the ground. Tennessee's defense looked very good. Good start to the season so far for Tennessee.
Yeah, I think everyone's just calling him Nico now at this point, but yeah, he's been phenomenal to start the season. Moving on, some of the games you already spoke about, Texas and Michigan. Texas just really showed that they are not here to play around. They dominated Michigan. They win by 19 on the scoreboard, but it really even felt like more if you were watching this game. Quinn Ewers was really good for them. Michigan, just exactly what we expected from them. They were not able to move the ball. That's a problem why a ton of people, including myself, including you, Mike, expected Michigan to fall in the rankings quick because they were overrated to begin the season. You win a national title, you're going to get some respect in the polls early. Whether you can live up to that is completely up to you. They were not able to do that. Texas is a great team. but Michigan got embarrassed at home. There's no other way to spin it. They fall to number 17 in the poll, right ahead of Notre Dame, who falls all the way to 18 after starting so high in the rankings. I believe they were at 5 at one point, and they fall all the way down to 18 now, losing to Northern Illinois, like you said. They have the same problem that they had against A&M. They couldn't really move the ball much. We accepted it against A&M because they were playing so good defensively, and they're playing such a good team, allegedly, in Texas A&M, in a tough place to play in Allen Field. That's a tough place to play, but regardless, we gave them the benefit of the doubt because they were able to get the win. But then they come back home, first home game of the season. They still can't score, only put up 2 touchdowns on the game. They had a chance to win it at the end after playing so bad for most of this game, and they're not able to do that. They get a field goal blocked late in that game. Unfortunate for them. Oregon, what a game against Boise State. I agree with you. I do think Boise State is going to be a good team. So I do not view this Oregon win as badly as I viewed the first win. It's not very often in college football do you see a team drop 6 spots in the rankings after going 2-0 in their first 2 games. Oregon does that. They drop from 3 to 9 in the latest poll this week. They are going to be a good team. I do believe that, but they're not going to be able to play the defense that they played in this game in the Big Ten. You're not going to be able to do that. Teams are going to beat you up and not let you score, so you're not going to be able to put up 37 points in a game against the Big Ten teams. They're going to need to freshen up on both sides of the ball before they get to Big Ten play. I do think they're one of the best teams in the country, but I definitely think they're on the watch where they're going to lose at least a game at some point in Big Ten play. I don't see them coming out of it undefeated. Moving on here, another team who I'm a little bit worried about in Big Ten play is Penn State. They're sitting here ranked 8, going 2-0 in their first 2 games. Neither of them looked great. They went down to the wire here with Bowling Green. They were down at 24-20 at half against Bowling Green, and they just didn't really look good early. Luckily for them, they're able to shut down Bowling Green defensively in the second half. They only allowed 3 points. They put up 14 of their own, and they win this game late. Missouri looked great against Buffalo, didn't allow a single point. Missouri is a scary team, and I think they're going to look great in SEC play this year. They're up to number 6 in the country now, and that makes how many SEC teams are up here? SEC has number 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the rankings, which is just crazy. The first is that, yeah, literally every team but Ohio State in the top 7 is an SEC team, which is just going to make for some chaos. That's obviously going to shake itself up when everybody has to play each other at some point. But at this very moment, they're getting a ton of respect in the AP poll. Miami, inferior opponent. They play here in Florida A&M. They get the job done with them. Same thing with USC playing against Utah State. They looked great week 1 against LSU, and they come out here and dominate an opponent they should beat. That's very encouraging. It's very easy to have a letdown game. We saw it from Notre Dame. They went and they beat A&M at home, and they in A&M, I should say, at Calfield, and then they come down to back home in South Bend, and they lose to Northern Illinois. A letdown game for them. USC had a chance to do that here against Utah State. They didn't do that in this game. Oklahoma loses a messy game to Houston, where they put up just 1 safety in the second half as their only points, but they still win 16-12. Oklahoma State, Arkansas, one of the craziest early games of the day. They go 39-31 in a win against Arkansas in overtime, a game that they were losing badly early. I believe they went down 21-0 in this game. And for a team that relies on the run like Oklahoma State, that's definitely something to be concerned about. Regardless, they go against an SEC defense, work their way back, put up 18 points in the fourth quarter and 24 in the second half, and they win in overtime against Arkansas. A few more games here. We have Illinois winning at home against Kansas, a good Kansas team. Kansas football has really been on the ups in the past 2 years. They were very irrelevant, to say the least, prior to that. They've been really good in the past couple of years. They lose a tough one on the road to an Illinois team. Moving on here, Iowa State rivalry game. Iowa controlled this game for the entire first half. They're up 13-0, and then they kind of just lost it in the second half. Not something we are used to seeing from Iowa teams, but they did. Iowa State squeaks out a win there. And then last 2 games here, Clemson destroys App State at home after a really embarrassing performance week 1 against Georgia. That might tell us a lot about Georgia, how good they are against. I know they matched up well against Clemson. Clemson's O-line struggles, and Georgia's pass rush is amazing. App State's pass rush isn't bad either. I bet against Clemson here on the spread because I saw another opportunity for a Georgia situation to happen where they get destroyed in the pass rush. That was not the case. Clemson's offense was amazing. They put up 56 in the first half and win this game 66-20. And then last game here, Georgia Tech Syracuse. Georgia Tech started the season 2-0, winning a couple big games, and then they lose at home or on the road in the Dome against Syracuse in a very close game. They came back in this one, almost won it. They weren't able to. I think Georgia Tech is going to be one of the better teams in the ACC going forward, but it's a tough loss. It's tough to play at Syracuse.
Yeah, and speaking of that game, Kyle McCord might actually be pretty good. 32 for 46, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. He was phenomenal in this game. Helped Syracuse win that one. What a game from him. Great game, 31-28, close one. Syracuse had a running game. Like you said, Georgia Tech came back late, but Syracuse is able to get the job done. Kyle McCord looked good. Illinois versus Kansas was a great game as well. I want to talk about that one. Illinois, Big 10 versus Big 12 here. Jalen Daniels, he's been kind of hyped up the last couple of years, had to deal with injuries. Didn't have his best game here against Illinois, 2 touchdowns and 3 picks. The Illinois defenses have been very good in recent years. It looks like that's going to continue. They continue to make good cornerbacks. I think that's going to happen again. Nebraska versus Colorado. Colorado continues to show that, I guess, these Deion Sanders teams, they have a high ego, but the offensive line continues to fail. The defense continues to struggle, and Nebraska pretty much just dominated them. Dylan Raiola didn't have to do too much. They were able to run the ball easy, and defensively, they were able to slow down Colorado when Shedeur Sanders was under pressure for pretty much the entire game. Couldn't do much. Travis Hunter did still have 10 catches for 110 yards, but the Colorado offense did not move the ball very well at all. Shiloh Sanders did pick up an injury in this game. I think he'll be out for the season. I think he had just had surgery on his forearm, so unfortunate for him. But this Colorado team, they're not going to be good again. Defense just cannot hang with these top teams in their offensive line. Still not good at all. Last game I wanted to talk about, Oregon versus Houston. Way too close for Oregon in this game. I think Houston will be a solid team.
Oklahoma.
But Oklahoma, yeah. Oklahoma, Houston. Too close of a game for them. Jackson Arnold, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. They didn't run the ball very well, but they relied on their defense to win it for them, and they did phenomenal. I think that's going to be the identity of this Oklahoma team, is their defense is going to win them games, and their offense just has to put them ahead. So overall, good week of college football.
Which is just wild to say that an Oklahoma team has to rely on their defense to win.
Yeah.
But no Dylan Gabriel.
The new era.
Yeah. Also, a couple, I wanted to branch off the Nebraska-Colorado point I forgot to mention. Nebraska finds their way into the top 25 now. At number 23, we have 4 new teams in the top 25 this week. 21, Iowa State gets in after a big win against Iowa. Nebraska, like I said, at 23. Then we have Boston College, who I keep forgetting their quarterback's name. I don't know how I keep forgetting his name, but he's a playmaker. He dominated against Florida State, and now he gets himself in the rankings. And then at 25, Northern Illinois in at 2-0 after beating Notre Dame. They are ranked under Notre Dame in the poll, but regardless, that does help Notre Dame. Yes, Castellanos. Yeah, I don't know how I forget that, but deep drive to left. But Northern Illinois definitely helping out Notre Dame now that they are getting more respected. If Northern Illinois can be a dominant mid-major team, then, which I feel like people never use that term in college football, but I wanted to. If they could become a dominant mid-major team, that helps Notre Dame out a lot, especially if Notre Dame can figure it out later on in the year.
We saw a couple of MAC teams. Bowling Green held in there with Penn State. Maybe the MAC's a conference to watch out for this year.
Buffalo did not. They did not do their job.
No, but Boston College, big game against Michigan State in 2 weeks. I'm excited for that one. Big 10 versus Boston College.
That'll be fun.
At Boston College, red bandana game. I'm nervous.
All right. Moving on here. We'll talk quickly about Monday Night Football that happened last night as we're recording here on Tuesday. 49ers beat the Jets 32-19. I texted you on Monday morning, and I was like, I'm flipping my pick. I'm not taking the Jets anymore. Something's telling me the Niners. I moved the line, took him at -3. That ended up still being a fine line even with Christian McCaffrey going out. You'll see in the podcast that gets uploaded before this one, the recap of the first week of the NFL. We find out midway through that one that CMC will not be playing on Monday night. But regardless, Jordan Mason still comes in there and 28 carries for 147 yards. There's a little bit of controversy with that People are saying that he said that he knew he was going to start this game on Friday, and the NFL didn't disclose the Christian McCaffrey information until Monday. I know that definitely pisses off some bettors and some fantasy owners, but still, it is what it is. I don't think it's really like a Joe Burrow situation at all. We also see Deebo Samuel get 8 rushes this game. He was given the ball a ton of carry. He only gets 23 yards, but he was still effective. He had a touchdown there. He also gets 5 catches for 54 on the game. Aaron Rodgers didn't look great, to be honest, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. First game in 2 years, and you got to play against this 49ers defense who is relentless. Especially, I want to point out last year, they were a great defense, but there were some question marks that people didn't really talk about them in the run game. They were able to be ran on all year last year. They did not get ran on last night. If Breece Hall was able to run all over this 49ers defense, that would have set Aaron Rodgers up a lot better. He would have had a much better game. I do put a lot of the blame on the offense and the fact that they couldn't run the ball. Allen Lazard has a drop early in this game on the first or second drive. I forget which one it was, but he ends up finishing with 2 touchdowns, 6 catches for 89 yards. He was phenomenal for them. I know Aaron Rodgers before the game was saying that Allen Lazard's starting to look like Green Bay Allen Lazard again. If he can get that, we know he loves him as a target. That will be great for them. Jets defense, I will actually give some credit to the Jets defense, regardless of the 32 points you see from the Niners on the board here. They were just put in a lot of tough spots. They did what they could with what they had at the time, but they were put in a lot of tough spots. We're going to see in the coming weeks for the Jets. I looked at their upcoming schedule, and it's pretty cake for the next 4 weeks. They go at Tennessee, versus New England, versus Denver, versus Minnesota for their next 4 games. So they're going to be in a good spot to pick up at least 3 wins there, probably 4. They get to play against some worse offenses that their defense can torch and put Aaron Rodgers in a position where he's not going to have to do anything too special to get wins. I'm not worried about the Jets. I think the Niners are in a great spot. Doing this without Christian McCaffrey is super impressive. Says a lot about the Giants' run game that they can get 28 carries for 147 yards out of their backup running back. Regardless, I come out of this game feeling good, solid about both teams. Feel better about the Niners, of course, but good statement on Monday night.
Yeah, the 49ers defense really shut down Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense outside of that one drive in the second or first quarter where they looked like they might have something going. One thing I took from this game was I feel like the Jets just need another receiving weapon opposite of Garrett Wilson. We did see Lazard get 2 touchdowns, but overall, I feel like it's just a lot of Garrett Wilson, especially on third downs. You kind of know where they're going to go with the football. Breece Hall, he had a solid game, needs to hold on to the ball better. Had that bad turnover on their second drive. But overall, Aaron Rodgers, he looked all right, looked a little nervous to get hit, but I think he'll get better throughout the season goes on. He is older. Their offensive line did struggle, but I think that was just how great the 49ers pass rush is, especially with Nick Bosa. And then the 49ers on offense were able to just run the ball all over the Jets, which is something I wasn't expecting. But Jordan Mason was running through holes that were the size of an ocean. Very impressive for the 49ers offensive line to do that. And then the Jets pass rush really didn't get to Brock Purdy enough to affect him at all. He didn't really have to do too much. Just picked apart this defense whenever he needed to. Jordan Mason pretty much was able to do the rest. Their offense looked great and the defense looked great for the 49ers. So I expect that just to continue throughout the season. We said at the end of the pod that plus 4.5 might be a trap, and it was. But the Jets need to regroup. You should be fine. You need your defense had an uncharacteristic bad performance. I think that their defensive unit will be fine. They should get that offensive unit going under Rodgers, but Robert Saleh doesn't have a great record overall, so we just kind of got to prove that he might not be a fraud.
All right. Moving on here to the preview for the NFL Week 2. We are here, and our first game of this week will be Thursday Night Football. And shockingly, we get gifted with a great Thursday Night Football game Week 2. We don't get that very often. We have Bills at Dolphins. The Dolphins led the league in passing yards in a bad Week 1 for passing in the league. If you look at the stats across the league, passing was down all week. The Dolphins still were able to get 338 yards passing on the week, though. Dolphins' run game was very lackluster in Week 1. We said they need to improve off of that. They need to be able to get either Mostert or HN going. They need that for the season, not just this game, not just last game, but they need that for the entire season to be able to unlock their passing offense overall using that run. Buffalo defense struggled in week one, especially in the run department. They were not really able to stop the Cardinals at all in the run department. They need to get better in that field. I'm worried about them on defense as a whole for the year. And when they're playing against a team like the Dolphins, you do not want to have concerns defensively. I think Miami should pass all over any defense, but especially this Buffalo secondary. I think they should be able to see a lot of success. We saw them rusty in week one. I think we see a much improved Dolphins offense in game two here, still staying at home in Miami. I know they lost this game last year. They really want to come back and win it after losing it last year. Dolphins had a great pass rush in week one. I think they could get to Josh Allen early and often and fluster him. He's a hard guy to fluster, but when you can, he makes some mistakes at times. I think for the Bills, you have to run the ball. If they're not able to have success running the ball, like they were not able to have success week one running the ball against Arizona, it's going to be a long night for them against this Dolphins defense, especially with their pass rush. Overall, I feel we were talking before the pod. We both do not like most of the lines out there right now for this week. I think there's a lot of tough lines to gauge. This is not one of them for me. I feel pretty good about taking Miami -2 here.
Yeah, this is the battle of two, seems like immovable objects. Josh Allen versus the Dolphins. He is 11-1 against the Dolphins. He just has their number. He knows what to do against them, and he wins way more than he loses. But Mike McDaniel is 7-0 in the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. So two numbers you don't really want to bet against. Josh Allen, he struggled a little early against the Cardinals, but in the second half, he was like an MVP candidate. Played very good. Against the Dolphins, he's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in 13 straight games against Miami, averaging 285 passing yards, 50 rushing yards against them. He knows what to do against this defense. He's been very good against them. Their defense picked it up late last week in the second half, but this Dolphins team is way different than the Cardinals team that they played last week. You're going to have to match up with their speed. They are hopefully fully healthy. HN is dealing with a little bit of an injury. Hopefully he'll be good to go. Game is in Miami. Dolphins don't have to leave for the first 2 weeks. They're great at the start of the season. It is a primetime game. It's, like I said, Mike McDaniel 7-0 in the first 3 weeks of the season. Will they be able to get the ball to their weapons early and try to score in this Bills defense to get ahead? I'm leaning more towards the Bills here just because I think I trust Josh Allen against this Dolphins team more. So I'm going to go with the Bills +2.
Okay, we're different on the first pick. Good start from last week, which I guess we can say it's on the screen. We both were 7-9 last week. You can see our post for the graphics on Twitter at EngageAPod. We show that which games we won, which games we lost. We both just had a really tough stretch in the middle there where we had games like the Bengals, games like the Dolphins, where we either lose bad or lose by a couple points. Regardless, we start differing here. Second game of the preview. Colts at Packers. Colts go into Lambeau after losing a really close one to Houston. Malik Willis is going to be the starter for Green Bay, it looks like, for the next couple weeks here. His career, he has 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on 67 career pass attempts. I am very worried about the Packers without Jordan Love. They have one of the worst backup quarterbacks in the league. I hate to say it to Malik Willis. I wanted him to be a Lion 3 years ago, but we've seen enough from him. I am worried about the Packers, at least in these next few weeks. Key to the game for the Packers here is going to be to run the ball. That's going to be the key for them this entire stretch here with Malik Willis. They are a pass-first team, those are the teams that I worry about more if your quarterback gets injured. For instance, a team like the Colts we saw last year are a team that liked to run the ball. They were able to recover from losing Anthony Richardson and putting in not Joe Flacco, and putting in Gardner Minshew. They were able to get over that hump and still win games because they're not a team that is solely focused on passing the football, while the Packers are focused on passing the football. So losing their quarterback is huge for them. They're going to need to run the ball. The Colts did get run all over last week in Houston by Joe Mixon and a Houston team that we both didn't think was going to be able to run the ball super well this year. So if the Packers can find success there, they could stay in this game. This is a game the Colts should be able to figure out their run game, though, and establish their offense. They weren't able to do that last week against the Texans. This Green Bay team is a team you can run the ball against. The Colts' identity is going to start and finish with the run game, where they can then unlock deep passes to Pierce, deep passes to Pittman, using Anthony Richardson's strong arm. They can do that once they establish the run game with Jonathan Taylor. This is a game they should be able to do that. I think Green Bay in this game does see some success in the run game, though. And I think this game surprisingly goes over. I know a lot of people are probably going to pick the under. I think this game does surprisingly go over, but Indianapolis does get the win. Give me the Colts -3 in Lambeau.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson's hoping to continue and grow off of his solid week 1 performance. Colts are hopefully going to get Josh Downs back, and that'll help their offense, especially with some short yardage situations, third down situations. They need their run defense to step up in this game better than it was last week. I expect it to, which is why I'm leaning towards the Colts, but I'm worried about the secondary now again. We just got announced that Julius Brents will be out for the season with a knee injury, so an already very poor secondary is depleted even more. Not excited about that at all. Malik Willis is obviously starting. That's luckily for the Colts secondary that they get to go against a quarterback who is not too much of a threat in the passing game. The Packers are going to run the ball a lot, and I really just expect the Colts run defense to figure it out and do better than they have in recent weeks. So I think the Colts are going to be able to score more in this game. I think they're going to be able to win by about 10 points in Lambeau. They got lucky that Jordan Love isn't playing this game, because if the Packers were able to pass the ball with Jordan Love's arm to his decent trio / I guess they have 4 really good receivers, but yeah, I think the Colts will be able to slow down the run a little bit, and I don't trust Malik Willis to pass the football. So Colts get lucky here, and I'm going to go with Colts -3.
Okay, moving on here to Raiders at Ravens. Raiders go into this game being wildly disrespected as 10-point underdogs in week 2, biggest spread of the week. Raiders secondary was able to see some success versus the Chargers, but that's a completely different ball game when you're playing against an offense like the Ravens, who can pass on you. They can run on you. The Chargers are a team that we both said need to establish the run early and often because they're going to have some struggles in the pass game. They had those against the Raiders, but that's, like I said, a completely different ball game here against Baltimore. Raiders also in that Chargers game got ran all over by Dobbins and the Chargers. If the Ravens O-line and a non-Lamar run game do not see success here against the Raiders, I am going to be worried. They didn't have a ton of success without Lamar running the ball up the middle with Derrick Henry in week 1 against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a great defense, though. If they're not able to do that here against the Raiders, there's definitely a concern there in that aspect of their game, which is one they need to be successful. As much as I want to take the big underdog spreads this year, because I feel like the NFL is a league where you see a big spread, you take the dog. It's just how you have to play it. But I could see the Raiders getting blown out in this game. Baltimore's run defense was solid in week 1. Raiders' run offense was bad in week 1. That's a recipe for disaster, forcing the ball into Gardner Minshew's hands, forcing the ball into maybe Aiden O'Connell's hands. That's not a good recipe for success for the Raiders. So I am going to take a big favorite here and take the Ravens -10.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on this one just because it's such a big spread. But the Raiders last week, they look almost like their worst coaching performance under Antonio Pierce. A lot of questionable decisions overall. Like you had mentioned, they really can't run the football. That's going to put the ball in Gardner Minshew's hands, and I don't trust him against this Ravens defense. They have to go against Lamar Jackson, who's one of the hardest players to go against, especially if you don't play him very often. He was solid in week 1. I expect him to be in the pocket more this week, not taking some of them hard hits. Ravens do have extra time to prepare for this game, considering they played on Thursday. I'm going to go with Ravens -9.5 as well. I just don't trust this Raiders team to be able to slow down Lamar and be able to score on this Ravens defense.
Okay, so the line has moved. I completely forgot before we prepared because I did these notes earlier on in the day. I completely forgot to check. So are all those lines that I said earlier still stand outside of this one?
2.5 Dolphins Bills. I don't know if you said 2.
It's 2.5 now.
Yeah.
I guess we still get a profit boost. Okay, so the early money is going on the Fins. So okay, -2.5 on the Dolphins then, and then -9.5 on the Ravens. So I guess you get a half point either way. So moving on here to put in 8.5, 9.5 to the Saints at Cowboys. We both said that the Saints have an opportunity to be a solid team. They have a lot of talent on the back end defensively. Their talent on the front end defensively was a question mark. They looked great in week 1 against the Panthers. That doesn't say much, though. And then offensively, we know they have arguably the worst O-line in the league, but we also know they have great weapons, and they have a quarterback in Derek Carr that is just always going to be a question mark. Saints defense is super impressive. and the Cowboys did show some struggles in week 1. I definitely expect this game to go under. I think we're going to see a little bit of a struggle from the Cowboys offense. I don't think the Saints are going to be able to do much against this Cowboys defense at all, especially with the pass rush. Micah Parsons is going to be all over Derek Carr all day. It's going to be a tough day for the Saints. New Orleans had the best run defense in week 1, but that was mainly due to the fact that Carolina was just down by so much. They had to pass this entire game. I think Dallas, as much as I doubt this run game, and I seriously have massive concerns about this run game, I think they might be able to get something maybe going in this one. I trust Dak and Dallas's offense more than I trust I trust Dak and Dallas's offense against the New Orleans defense more than I trust the New Orleans defense against the Cowboys, or the New Orleans offense against the Cowboys defense. Jesus, that was a tongue twister. But I wish the spread was lower in this game. It's big at 6.5, but I just keep seeing in my head Derek Carr getting destroyed by Micah Parsons, and I cannot get that image out of my head, so I have to take the Cowboys reluctantly at -6.5, unless that line moved as well. No, it did not.
No, I don't think it did. Saints looked very good in week 1. They were playing the Panthers team that I am not high on at all. I don't think that Panthers team is very good, but their secondary looked very good and could slow down the passing game of the Cowboys. Offensively, Clint Kubiak had a very good game plan going into the game. Their offense looked very good. They had deep chances. They were able to run the ball very well with Kamara. But I think this Cowboys defense is going to be it's going to be a way harder task than it was against the Panthers. I think 6.5 is a big number, but I still kind of like the Cowboys. I trust their D-line to kind of take over the game. I think Micah Parsons is going to be with Derek Carr the entire game in the backfield, and I don't think the Saints are going to be able to run the ball close to as efficient as they were able to run the ball against the Panthers. Like you said, the Saints O-line is not very good. Dak needs to continue to not turn the ball over. If they can run the ball with Ezekiel Elliott, that's a plus, but they're going to have to probably pass the ball against this tough Saints pass defense with their good secondary. But we saw them go against the Browns defense last week, who I'm pretty high on. They were able to put up enough points to win the game. Their defense did the rest. I think it's going to be kind of a similar game to that one, so I'm going to go with Cowboys -6.5.
Okay, I also wanted to have this conversation about the line movement now. I forgot about it last week. So I have kind of an idea. Let me know what you think about it. Because we are making these picks on Tuesdays, and there is a ton of line movement in 5 days from Tuesday to Sunday, I think we can implement a rule where any like half point changes, like if it's a 6.5 on Tuesday and it moves to a 7 or a 6 on Sunday, we don't have to change anything. We'll just rock with our initial pick. But I think anything over a full point, we should adjust on Sunday and either take the new line or flip it and take it on the other side. Because if we take Chargers -6.5, for example, on the next game, and somebody gets hurt, or 2 offensive linemen or 3 offensive linemen get hurt in practice, and the line moves to Chargers -3.5 on Sunday, we shouldn't still have to take 6.5. What do you think?
No, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, we saw it last week with the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, we thought he was playing and he wasn't. So stuff like that's going to happen.
Exactly. So I think, do you want to change it to like 1.5? I think a point is fair, but
I think a point's fair.
All right. So anything over a point, we will readjust on Sunday. So moving on here to the Chargers at Panthers. Panthers had the worst week of any team in week 1. They got blown out. They didn't look good in any aspect. They just looked absolutely horrible against the Saints. Made the Saints look really, really good. Chargers pass rush was lethal in week 1. I think that's going to continue for them. Bryce Young under pressure is going to struggle even against a mid-secondary of the Chargers. They're going to be able to enforce at the line on defense, which is going to take a lot of pressure off their secondary. Carolina got destroyed on the ground with no Derek Brown. They're going to continue to get destroyed on the ground with no Derek Brown. He is on the IR now. Chargers can lean on that. I still am going to just keep hammering every week. The Chargers need to run the ball, and they could be a fine team. It will help their pass game out so much, especially when they have Justin Herbert. They're going to lean on that. If the Chargers have to get pass heavy in this game, or they try to get pass heavy for whatever reason, it could get dicey, but they can lean on Dobbins and Edwards, and they can control this game from the start. Despite a large spread, I just cannot justify betting on Carolina here at all after last week. Chargers get a couple good matchups early in the season here. I think they start to win out. Give me the Chargers -6.5.
I just saw a video. I don't know if you've seen the Tua Tagovailoa video talking about Tyreek Hill.
No.
He was on like his YouTube channel or whatever, and he said, "That's crazy. Tua was speeding before the game, speeding during the game. I hope he wasn't speeding after the game."
That's wild. That body cam footage, we talked about it on the episode we recorded yesterday. Crazy.
Yeah,
That was wild.
crazy. But
Can you
back to the
imagine
Chargers,
driving
man.
into the game like as a fan and you see your
Yeah, and
favorite
just seeing,
player getting arrested? That's crazy.
yeah, and then seeing like all the other players start to just try to crowd around him.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was
Um,
wild.
wild scenes. But back to the Chargers, Panthers. Chargers looked rough a little early last week, but in the second half, they were able to dominate with J.K. Dobbins on the ground, 131 yards in the second half. They looked well coached with their first game with Jim Harbaugh. Herbert didn't have to do anything too special. Khalil Mack and Nick Bosa and this defensive line looked great against the Raiders. They got pressure on Gardner Minshew, had him struggling in that game. I expect there to be a lot of that against the Panthers and their offensive line. Panthers, they looked abysmal last week. Offensive line wasn't great. And even when they were able to hold up, Bryce Young still was struggling, throwing bad interceptions. Bryce Young hasn't really showed me anything to show that he can really dominate against any NFL defenses, and especially one with a pass rush like this. The secondary isn't great for the Chargers, but I think this is kind of one of the easier ones for me to pick. I think the Chargers are just going to beat up on the Panthers. Panthers defense was not good last week. I expect Dobbins to be able to run over them again, like we saw Kamara do last week for the Saints. So I got Chargers -6.5.
Okay, moving on here to 49ers at Vikings. The San Francisco run defense, as we spoke about earlier in this episode, was really, really good versus the Jets. That's very encouraging to see from them. If that unit can be great and their pass defense will be great with the guys they have back there, especially with Warner manning the middle, this defense is going to be elite once again. As good as Darnold looked at times last week, they had to lean on the run, and I don't really see that as an option in this game. I don't think they're going to be able to lean on Aaron Jones as much as they were in the game against the Giants. I think that definitely could be a struggle for them. I think we see some success from the Vikings in the pass game, but I think overall we just see a 49ers dominant defensive performance here. The Vikings dominated the Giants due to getting to the quarterback. If they can do that to Purdy, it's not going to be easy for him, but I do not expect them to be able to do what they did to the Giants to the 49ers. And I'll speak on the Giants a little bit later and how I feel about the Daniel Jones situation. But CMC may or may not be back in this game, but the 49ers performance in week 1 gives me enough to think that they're going to roll past Minnesota here in week 2. So give me the 49ers -6.
49ers, they look like one of the best teams in the NFC here. The only thing for the Vikings really is that this could be a Sam Darnold revenge game. He did play for the 49ers last year. Vikings, these two teams played last year, and the Vikings had a surprising win against the 49ers. Kirk Cousins was at quarterback in a primetime game. Just had a little thought that the 49ers might still have that on their mind, looking for maybe a revenge game just against a team they lost to. Brock Purdy wasn't good in that game. I feel like in this game he's going to be better. They've seen this Vikings defense before now. I think this defense is going to be able to slow down Sam Darnold in this offense. They looked great last week. Whether I kind of don't expect Christian McCaffrey to play again. I think it's going to be Jordan Mason again. I still trust the 49ers to be able to run the ball on this Vikings team, pass the ball. They'll be more polished with a week of practice with Ayuk and Devo and all their guys. The O-line looked better than I thought it would last week for the 49ers. The Vikings, they looked better than I thought they would too, but I just think this 49ers team has too much for the Vikings to handle. So I'm going to go with 49ers -6 as well. But if the Vikings find a way to maybe win this game, I don't think they will, but Kevin O'Connell is kind of becoming just a kind of under the radar elite coach.
Yes, he really. I mean, they were playing the Giants week 1, but he's getting the most out of what he has right now. So,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
did that towards the end of last year too without Kirk. But moving on here to Buccaneers at Lions. Lions yet again play another team they beat in the playoffs at home last year. The Bucs had a great week 1 versus a very weak Washington team. The run offense was still brutal in that Washington game. I think they're definitely going to struggle against a Lions front that is adding DJ Reader this week, which is going to be huge for them in the run game and in the pass rush. I think he's truly going to unlock this pass rush, and I think this Lions pass rush, if they can stay healthy and they have a consistent 4 of Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil, and Marcus Davenport, that unit will be amazing. They just all have to stay healthy. Bucks passed all over a bad Washington secondary last week. The Lions secondary is still a question mark. They're very young. I think they're going to improve week to week. I expect that from this unit, and I think we see a better unit than we saw last week against the Rams. Lions will not run the ball as well as they did in week one against the Rams, but the Lions are a team that will run the ball well. They're not going to give up on it, and they're going to insert their dominance early and often in this game. Goff, Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Gibbs, Laporta should all dominate in the pass game against a pretty bad Tampa Bay secondary. I think we're going to finally see. Last week, the Lions wanted to control the game with the run. They didn't want Goff airing it out too much, just a few times. I think we're going to see them take a lot more chances in this game. I think we see another big Jameson Williams game. I look for the Lions to take a lot of shots in this game, but they're not going to give up on the run, regardless of if they're taking those shots or not. Overall, the Lions won this exact game in the playoffs last year. The Lions got better. The Bucs didn't. I expect to see a solid win here for the Lions. I will take them even at the big spread of -7.
Didn't these two teams play in the regular season last year?
They did. Lions won that game as well, yeah, in Tampa.
And that was close, right?
I think they won by 14, like 20-6 or something like that. Was that the exact score?
I was trying to look it up.
That's genuinely off the top. I think it's 20-6. I'm not positive.
I was trying to look it up, and all I kept getting was the playoff game.
Go ahead. You can continue.
Back to the Bucs lines.
Yeah,
Bucs
20-6.
Wow, sniped it.
Crazy. I knew it was 14, and I knew they didn't score much.
Buccaneers offense looked very good last week. They dominated one of the worst defenses in the Commanders. They're going to have motivation, obviously, losing to this team twice last year, especially in the playoffs. Baker needs to continue to build off of his strong week one performance. He got the ball to his playmakers, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, especially rookie Jalen McMillan as well. Rachaad White got the ball. Bucky Irving was getting the ball on the ground. They need to continue to do that and get the ball, spread it out. It'll be interesting to see how the backfield splits go if they continue to have Rachaad White as the pass back and Bucky Irving as the run back. But for the Lions, it's another test for this restructured young secondary that they have going against some great weapons with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. The secondary is better. It's just going to be, can the Lions pass rush get to Baker and take him down? They get a lot of pressures on the quarterback. They need to be able to get the sacks. Offensively, I feel like the Lions are going to kind of have their way. They're going to be able to run the ball a little bit. Their offensive line continues to dominate any team they pretty much play. I think Amon-Ra is going to have a bounce back week after he struggled in week one. I kind of need to pick an underdog at some point, but 7 points is a big number. I'm still going to go with Lions -7 in this one.
Yeah, a lot of hovering around a touchdown and hovering around a field goal on these spreads this week. But moving on here to Seahawks at Patriots Super Bowl rematch from 2016. I can't remember off the top of my head. Somewhere in there. Seahawks coming off a weird week one win, and the Patriots are coming off of a surprise week one road win. Seahawks really had to lean on their run game in week one. We'll see if they have more success than Cincinnati did against them in week one. I don't feel highly about the Cincinnati run offense, so I think the Seahawks will perform better than the Bengals did against the Pats last week. Seahawks looked great on all fronts defensively week one. I think the Pats should struggle to move the ball again, similar to how Bo Nix struggled in week one. Seattle's offense struggling is definitely scary to me, especially playing a Pats defense that overperformed in week one and a Pats team that you know is always going to be scrappy. I'm going to bet on Seattle's defense being great in this game and their offense doing more than Cincy was able to do overall, although they may not be great. The Patriots, I really want to crown them as this bad team that's scrappy enough that is going to give all these teams problems, especially in New England. But I look at this matchup, and it's tough for me not to take Seattle -3.5, so I'm going to take Seattle.
Yes, Seattle's defense dominated Bo Nix in week one, and that Broncos offense. They are 2-5 in their past 7 games that kick off at the noon slot, which is 10 a.m. in Seattle. They have to travel across 2 New England games in New England. Hopefully, Kenneth Walker will be able to play in this game. He's dealing with an abdomen injury. I think he should be good to go. But overall, the Seahawks offense looked solid in week one. They were good on the ground. Geno Smith just needs to take care of the ball. Mike McDonald, I expect him to have a good game plan to slow down this Patriots offense that isn't too scary. Patriots kind of one of the week one surprises, especially just stealing a win against the Bengals. Gerard Mayo before the game told Jacoby Brissett that he believed in him, and Jacoby Brissett said that meant a lot to him, and he wanted to go out and get it done for his head coach. They got it done in week one. I don't think they'll be able to do it in back-to-back weeks. I think they're going to be a scrappy team. I think it's what, 3 or 3.5?
3.5, I believe.
3.5. I'm going to go with Seahawks minus 3.5. Continue to ride the favorites. The Pats secondary is going to be able to slow down the Seahawks passing attack that is very good with JSN, DK, and Tyler Lockett at Christian Gonzalez. It'll be interesting to see who he matches up with and if he can continue how great he started the season against Jamar Chase. But I just don't see this Patriots team being able to score too much on the Seahawks defense. So I'm going to take the Seahawks minus 3.5.
All right, moving on here to Browns at Jaguars. I fear this game is going to bring us a lot more questions than it does answers. If the Jags defense looks great, we will have to question whether their defense is good or if Deshaun Watson really is that bad. Jags offense should struggle versus a great Browns defense. I expect 3+ sacks for the Browns in this game. I think the Jags as a whole, though, are scrappy enough on defense to really give the Browns a problem. I think this is going to be a very low scoring game between both of these teams. The Jags being 3-point favorites is very, very questionable. It's giving me trap vibes. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Jags -3.
Really interesting. Deshaun Watson was
This is one of the
obviously,
few many or one of the many traps of this week, I feel like.
yeah.
To
There's
take
so
the Browns is the trap, I feel like.
Yeah, and I feel like I might be falling for it. But last week, Deshaun Watson was obviously terrible. One of the worst quarterbacks of the week, if not the worst quarterback. 0 for 10 on passes with 15 plus air yards. That was the worst since 2006 when air yards started being tracked. It was the sixth worst passing game in NFL history with a minimum of 45 attempts. I can't trust him right now to win them games. They really don't have a rushing attack at all either. So you have to really just believe in their defense to win them the game. The defense is very good. Struggled a little bit against the Cowboys, but they didn't really have much going for them on the other side of the ball. Jags looked great for 50% of the game last week. Phenomenal in the first half. Trevor Lawrence looked good. They were able to run the ball, and then the second half, it all kind of fell apart. They had some coaching issues. This is one of the tougher games for me to pick. I'm going back and forth. I almost need to pick an underdog at some point, but I think this could be a trap as well. Games in Jacksonville. I'm going to continue to not trust Deshaun Watson. I'm going to go with Jags -3. I can't put any faith in him right now with everything going on.
All right, another confusing line here, or not even really confusing. I just feel like Vegas didn't know what to do with it. Is the Giants at Commanders? Commanders undoubtedly look better in week 1 than the Giants did. The Giants O line, despite giving up 5 sacks, wasn't horrible. They released after the game who the sacks were credited to. Daniel Jones was credited for 3 of the 5 sacks for just running into guys. He looked super uncomfortable all game. And I believe he was also credited for 3 pressures on his own. So he was just so bad in week 1. Daniels looked pretty comfortable though in week 1. He just gets better every week. If you looked at Daniel Jones week 1 and you looked at Jaden Daniels week 1, JD and DJ, and you didn't know anything about them going in, you would assume that the rookie was Daniel Jones and Jaden Daniels was the vet. He just looked a lot more comfortable. I think he's going to just get better every week if he can stay healthy. I've always had a lot of confidence in him, but I'm always been super worried about him getting hurt and being a bust for that reason. I still feel the same way. I still feel like he's super talented. I just think he needs to stay healthy, and I'm a little bit worried with his sliding and the way he does it. But that's neither here nor there. I really want to take the Giants here because I feel like they have more talent overall, but I think the Commanders just have such a huge QB advantage in this game. The Commanders secondary is so bad that if DJ does not have success, I think the Giants are in serious trouble with him going forward. This is the game for him. This is where a QB should be able to have success. Commanders pass rush isn't crazy. Their secondary is bad. This is the game he needs to have success. And if he doesn't, then it's full 100% panic mode for them. I think that's the case here. I'm going to take the Commanders -1.5.
Daniel Jones looked terrible last week, like you said. He was phenomenal. Maybe the worst quarterback. Him and Deshaun Watson were going back and forth for who can look worse. But here they get a chance to go against,
Bryce Young and Caleb Williams has something
and
to say.
yeah,
So.
Bryce Young too. Yeah, couple. I think I saw that week 1 of this season was the worst passing yard average in like 20 something years. It's
Yeah,
only
it
like
was bad.
100. It's like 185 yards was the average
There's
passing
like
yards.
one 300-yard passer and like two 200-yard passers or something crazy.
Yeah, uh, wild first week. They get to go against one of the worst defenses in the NFL here, the Commanders. The secondary is bad. So, like you said, this is a game Daniel Jones has to prove something, anything at all. And if he can't, I think it's time to just honestly just get rid of him and as a whole. Either put him as your backup or just straight up cut him. If he can't do anything against this Commanders defense, he should just be gone. Week 2, and I would already put this as the game of the year for the Giants. They need to go out there and show something. Their offensive line struggled last week. Commanders' pass rush isn't too good, so they have a chance to bounce back. Defensively for the Giants, their pass rush needs to show something. Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns should be an elite duo. They should dominate this Commanders' offensive line and get to Jaden Daniels. Commanders' defense is bad. Jaden Daniels, you just got to continue showing flashes as a rookie. That's what their goal for the season is, and stay healthy. Started to develop a connection with Terry McLaurin. We didn't see too much of him in week 1. Just because of how important this game is for the Giants, I'm going to go with Giants plus 1.5. I feel like they have to win this game if they want to get anything out of the season at all. And if they don't, I think it's just going to continue to go downhill.
Yeah, I was a little incorrect on my stat there. It wasn't as bad as I said. There were two 300-yard passers with Tua and Matt Stafford, and then there were 13 200 to 299-yard passers, and then 17 under 200 yards, which is crazy. That also
And then
that
one under
starters,
100,
yeah, one under 100. Well,
at least one.
technically two if you count Tyrod Taylor last night. I don't. Regardless, moving on here to the Jets at Titans, which I believe is a 1 p.m. game, right? Yeah, there's a ton of 1 p.m. games this week. There's only 3 in the second window, and then, of course, the 3 primetime games. But Jets at Titans. Jets coming off a disappointing Monday Night Football, but they do play a bad team here in the Titans. We spoke about their schedule. They're going to have some easy games coming up here. We saw what happens when the Titans can't pass the ball when they did it against the Bears, and it's going to be significantly harder against this Jets defense than it was against the Bears. Titans pass defense was very good for versus Chicago, though. Will be interesting to see if they are actually a good unit or if the Bears just struggled. It would be hilarious to see the Titans pass offense or defense just get torched by Aaron Rodgers after Caleb Williams couldn't get 100 yards against them last week. But the Jets just need to have success running the ball. It's very, very important to Rodgers' success. I think they're going to have that success running the ball against the Titans. Maybe it's a trap here with the Jets being such a low favorite here, but I think the Jets are being a little undervalued here. I'm going to take them at -3.5.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are being a little bit undervalued for how poorly I feel like the Titans offense looked last week. The Jets offense wasn't good, but it's also their first that was their first full game with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback in 2 years. They have never had him ever, but under contract. It was a disappointing on the defensive side as well. I expect their defense to have a big response this game against the Titans offense that did not look good. Will Levis had maybe his worst performance as an NFL player. Couldn't get anything going against that Bears defense, which it is a great defense, but I think the Jets defense might be a little bit better than that. For the Jets, their offense had moments. They just need to limit the turnovers that they had early in the game. The Titans defense shut down Caleb Williams for most of the game. This time they're going against Aaron Rodgers, obviously a little bit more of a passing threat considering how long he's played. I think they just need a weapon to step up on the other side of Garrett Wilson. If it's Lazard, it's Lazard. Mike Williams played yesterday, right?
No, he's hurt. He's been hurt.
Oh, he is hurt. Okay.
Yeah,
that's what I thought because I didn't hear his name mentioned at all. He's someone
I think he was an IR candidate. I don't know if they officially put him on IR because or not IR, pup. He might have been a pup candidate. I'm not positive.
No, he did play.
Oh, he did? No.
Yes, that's what I thought I saw that he was playing,
really?
But his name was not mentioned at all. He only had 9 snaps and 0 targets, which is just a shocking development.
Maybe they're still babying him after the injury because I saw for like a week or so leading up to the game he wasn't supposed to play. So I had no idea he was out there.
Yeah, hopefully he can get healthy, get going because they need someone to step up opposite of Garrett Wilson. I'm gonna go with Jets -3.5 if that's what it was. I'm taking the Jets regardless. I think their secondary is going to step up. I don't think Will Levis is going to have much to be able to throw to with that secondary. And I don't expect the Titans to be able to run the ball. I think the Jets are going to make that an emphasis after struggling so much against the 49ers. So I got the Jets in this one.
Okay, moving on here to the 4 o'clock slate with the Rams at Cardinals. Cardinals shockingly enter this game as favorites, which that has trap energy for sure. Arizona's run defense will be solid this year, I think, but the pass defense will struggle versus Stafford. Stafford was able to adapt to having no O line and down one wide receiver against a great Lions defense, and I think he still has a monster year regardless of the situation. He's just that good. Cardinals are solid running the ball. The Rams did get pushed around last week, but I don't think the Cardinals have that kind of push up front that a team like the Lions does. I don't think we're going to see the Rams get destroyed at the point of emphasis like they did last week. Cardinals' key to winning this game is shutting down the Rams' run game. I think they can do that in this game, and I almost think they will do that. I think this game is going to be dangerously close, which is the reason why the Cardinals are favorites. But for back-to-back picks, I'm going to take a pick that I still feel like is a trap, but I have to take the Rams in this game. So give me the Rams plus 1.5 against the Cardinals at home.
Rams do lose Puka Nacua for a minimum 4 weeks. They did put him on IR, which is really unfortunate for them. But Cooper Kupp looked like he was completely healthy. He looked phenomenal in that first game, so I expect him to be the center of that Rams offense still. Their offensive line looked solid against the Lions when they were healthy. Defensively, Byron Young looked good. They had a little bit of a pass rush. And I think their defense just has to not let Kyler escape the pocket too much. For the Cardinals, it was a very impressive first game against the Bills. I think they're going to plan on getting the ball more to Marvin Harrison Jr. early and often. He just needs time to kind of get adjusted to the NFL. But I don't think their defense will be able to slow down Matt Stafford and his passing attack, which the Rams being underdog in this game is shocking, and I completely agree that just seems like it has to be a trap, but I have to take it. So I'm going to go Rams plus 1.5.
Okay, moving on here to Bengals at Chiefs, old AFC title game rematch. Very brutal game 2 for the Bengals to have to get here playing the Chiefs coming off of a bad loss against arguably the worst roster in the league in the Pats. Bengals looked very inconsistent on offense, and they still are probably not going to have T. Higgins in this game. Bengals will struggle when they cannot run it, and the Chiefs' run defense is pretty solid. We saw them shut down the Ravens last week in the run game. Similar to that Ravens game, I think the Chiefs are going to push around the Bengals in the trenches in this one. The Chiefs, even at 6 points, feel kind of undervalued here, in my opinion. I think people are going to want to take the Bengals as such big underdogs, and I understand that. But the Chiefs are just way more polished at this moment. Bengals got ran all over by New England and Stevenson. Kansas City and Pacheco are going to have a ton of success. If the Chiefs can have a solid run game and are stout on defense, I feel like they're damn near impossible to beat at this point. I think that's two things that are going to come to fruition here in a matchup with the Bengals that is much more favorable than it was in years past. The Bengals don't just suck in week 1. They suck to start the season in the Joe Burrow era. I think that continues in this losing streak in September. Give me the Chiefs -6 here at home at Arrowhead.
Yeah, Bengals are 1-10 in the first 2 weeks of the season under Zach Taylor, which is just absolutely terrible. But Joe Burrow is 3-1 versus the Chiefs as a whole. Averages 293 passing yards and a 9-3 touchdown to interception ratio. Hopefully they get T. Higgins back this week to help their passing attack. They need all their weapons to go against a team as good as the Chiefs. It's a team that Chiefs had maybe the most impressive win. Bengals had the most disappointing loss in week 1. So 6-point spread almost feels like it's not enough. We saw Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice look phenomenal for the Chiefs passing attack. Pacheco was good on the run. I agree. It's almost impossible to beat this Chiefs team. I think like 80% of the money is on the Chiefs in the spread, 95 on the Chiefs money line. I don't see the Bengals really being able to keep up with these targets, but at the same time, this just feels like a game where out of nowhere the Bengals just find a way to either stay in it or win just randomly. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the Bengals. It's +6, right?
Yep, 6.
Yeah, +6. I still think the Chiefs are going to win the game. I think the Bengals just find a way to make the game close somehow.
Okay, I could see that too. I could see it too. I don't know. I just feel like anytime the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball, it's tough. They're just tough to beat. And run defense and run offense are two categories where I struggle to be confident in Cincinnati, honestly. But moving on here to the last non-primetime game. Steelers at Broncos. Denver is really going to struggle to pass the ball all year, and the Steelers defense is an elite unit. The pass rush from Pittsburgh should be all over Bo Nix this entire game. Any team with question marks offensively is going to struggle against this Pittsburgh defense. It looks like Fields will start again for the Steelers. It doesn't look like Russell Wilson's going to be playing just yet. I do not love that for the Steelers, but Field style can definitely fool some bad defenses here. So I think he has some potential to be good in this game just because of the fact that I have no confidence in the Broncos defense and the way that Fields plays is just confusing sometimes for young defenses. I think we see a similar game that we saw as Pitt versus Atlanta, but the Denver, I should say Pittsburgh versus Atlanta. Pitt just sounds like college, but Pittsburgh versus Atlanta. But Denver is worse than Atlanta defensively. So I think the Steelers do see a lot more offensive success than they saw when they just kicked 6 field goals to beat Atlanta. I think this is maybe one of my favorite bets of this week. I love the Steelers -2.5. I love it.
I love it as well. Steelers defense dominated the Falcons last week. I expect them to do the same. TJ Watt was all over Kirk Cousins. I think this week he's going to be all over Bo Nixon, kind of come out as a front runner for Depoy early in the season. The Steelers, I think they're going to run the ball a lot in this one, try to get Najee a lot of touches. And if Fields is the quarterback, you can also just run the ball with him as well. And if it does happen that Russell Wilson gets his first start of the season, I think it's just a beautiful chance for him to get revenge on the Denver Broncos for what they did to him. Kind of hurt his legacy as a player a little bit, and just all the money issues and trying to get him to back out. Strange scenario, but for the Broncos, every quarterback who has thrown 42 plus pass attempts with 138 or fewer yards in NFL history, there's been 3 of them. Bo Nix, 40-plus-year-old Ben Roethlisberger, and our boy Jesse Palmer did that as well. So
wow,
not a good group there for Bo Nix. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is good, but that was when he was very old. He doesn't really throw the ball deep at all. He has a very low depth of target. I don't expect the Broncos to have much of a passing attack against the Steelers defense, and I don't expect them to be able to run the ball a lot. So this was an easy one for me. I'll go with Steelers -2.5. I am entertained to see the Patrick Surtain versus George Pickens matchup. It'll be interesting to see if George Pickens can finally get ahead of a guy who's one of the top cornerbacks in the league as an alpha receiver.
The only baseball talk we'll probably have for the next month. With his 14th leadoff home run of 2024, Kyle Schwarber now has the most ever in a single season leadoff home runs.
Wow, good for him.
Leadoff goat. But moving on
Wildest leadoff hitter of all time, but it makes sense.
Honestly. But I guess maybe you just put your best hitter leadoff no matter what. Maybe I guess the best hitter is Bryce Harper, but still, regardless, we don't got to talk baseball. Moving on here, Sunday Night Football. Bears at Texans. We have basically 3 good, in theory, matchups here in primetime this week. Texans had a great week 1 and showed flashes of being a phenomenal team when they played the Colts. Bears come into this game as huge dogs, and it seems like Vegas really wants people to take the Bears as huge dogs in this game because, I don't know, I feel like the Bears are one of the most hyped teams in the league going into the year, regardless of what we saw week 1. I mean, so are the Texans, but I think people are going to want to take the Bears here. Vegas wants people to take the Bears. Texans ran it so well week 1 unexpectedly that they won't run it as well against Chicago, in my opinion. I didn't think they were going to run it well against the Colts, but I definitely don't think they run it well against the Bears here. Texans' run defense was really good against the Colts and a good O-line that the Colts have and running back. I think they're going to be able to have a lot of success in the run defense department against the Bears. If the Bears don't have success in the run game to set up Caleb, I don't think this is a game where he's going to be able to succeed. I think most of the games early on in the season for rookie quarterbacks, especially Caleb, you're going to need to establish the run, put him in positions to succeed without having to throw it too deep. I think this is a game where they might have to get caught up in trying to throw the ball deep, which is not a recipe for success for the Bears. If we see a massive Caleb Williams improvement, I think the Bears can win this game / cover this game, but I don't think we see that. I'm taking the Texans -7 here.
Yeah, Caleb Williams struggled a lot to pass the ball in week 1 against the Titans. I view his Texans defense as a little bit better than that Titans, so he's going to have to figure some things out in practice. I don't expect them to really be able to run the ball very well either, with the Colts struggling against them in the run as well. But the Bears O-line versus the Texans D-line is something to watch because the Texans D-line if they can get to Caleb Williams with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, that's going to be a bad sign for the Bears. Texans show that they could run the ball with Joe Mixon, the Bears are going to have to at least play for it and worry about it. And I think that's going to open the game up for CJ Stroud a little bit, and he's going to have a pretty solid game. We saw Jalen Johnson was very good in week 1. I think he only had one target his way, and he broke it up. If CJ Stroud can continue to play how well he did on third downs on week 1, there's really not a team that can beat the Texans overall. I think this game is going to be very close to the spread, but I do like Texans -7 in this one. I think they're going to be able to get the job done against the Bears because I'm worried about Caleb Williams getting points on the board. If he can get points on the board, though, the Bears can easily get in this one, but he hasn't shown it yet.
Okay, rounding out the preview here with Monday Night Football, Falcons at Eagles. Kirk and the Falcons have to go into Philly in primetime after a really rough week 1. I think we see the Falcons have much more success in the pass game, though, than they did in week 1 against a tough Steelers defense. A lot more to give in the Eagles secondary. If the Eagles can stuff Atlanta's run game, though, I think they're going to have a phenomenal game defensively. They have a ton of rest for this game as they played on Friday night, and they're now playing on Monday night. Falcons defense is very impressive, though. I think we see some bad stuff from Hurts and the Eagles pass game. We saw a little bit of struggles at times when they played against the Packers, which is a defense I don't love on the back end. I think they're going to have a little bit more struggles this week, and hopefully for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts doesn't fall into making some mistakes against a tough secondary in Atlanta. Atlanta's run defense is somewhere between solid and good, in my opinion. They had a tough game week 1. I think they bounced back a little bit in this game, even though they have to go against a really tough run offense in the Eagles. Despite my concerns about Kirk, I do think this is a good matchup for him team-wise with a big spread. But as we were doing this pod about 45 minutes ago, I realized that we're going to watch primetime Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. And no matter if I think this is a good matchup for them, no matter if I want to take an underdog because I'm taking damn near only favorites today, I cannot justify taking Kirk Cousins in primetime. So give me the Eagles -6.5. I think they somehow get it done. I think Kirk shoots himself in the foot and the Eagles get a win.
Yeah, just another tough one to choose. Falcons looked very bad in week 1. They need to show something here in week 2 to just show the fans something after that rough performance and kind of stay in the NFC South hunt. Didn't look great against the Steelers defense. Like you said, he gets a good chance here against the Eagles secondary, which hasn't looked great last season and had a rough start to this season with Jaden Reed and the Packers being able to throw over them. I think in this game, the Falcons have to focus on getting the ball to their playmakers, specifically the receivers, Drake London and Darnell Mooney. They didn't have too much going in week 1. They have to kind of figure that out against the secondary. Their O-line should get back together a little bit this week. They struggled in week 1, especially the tackles. Kirk Cousins in primetime, a lot of people like to bet against him there. I'm kind of leaning towards him. Eagles got their offense going late in that game. I think they do still find a way to win this game. Saquon Barkley looked phenomenal week 1, was able to run the ball well. I think the Falcons defense is going to do enough, and I think the Eagles win, but I think the Falcons are able to cover 6.5.
Okay, moving on here now to our final segment of the show, our 3 best bets each for week 2 of the NFL season. You let me have one of the ones we both liked last week, so I will let you have the one we both like in Mile High this week, assuming you are going to take that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I will let you have that one. I will start us off with the under in Saints Cowboys at under 45.5. I really love the under in this game. I think the Cowboys are going to continue their slow starts offensively that we've seen from them, and the Saints defense, especially in the secondary, is really scrappy, and we know the Cowboys can't really run the ball too well. And with the Cowboys pass rush against this horrible Saints O-line, I think Derek Carr is going to be in trouble all day, and their speed outside isn't going to be able to help them as much as it did against Carolina. And we get it at a decently high number here at 45.5. So give me the under in Saints Cowboys.
Yeah, I'll go with Steelers -2.5 for my first one. I trust the Steelers team to get the job done in this one. They're going against a Broncos team that struggled very much in week 1 to score the ball, and the Steelers defense looked very good. I think they can score the ball with Justin Fields. I think they can get the run game going, and I just don't trust the Broncos to be able to move the football against the Steelers defense. So I think the Steelers are able to cover 2.5.
Okay, my next one here, I am taking the over 40.5 in Colts Packers. I think the Colts are going to be able to run all over this Packers team and just get what they want offensively as a whole. And as much as I don't believe in Malik Willis, I think the Packers are going to have a lot of success in the run game. And I think due to a banged up and not super talented Colts secondary, he might be able to have a couple good drives at the very least. Him being in this game is really cranking this over under low, but I think they're going to smash this between the both teams. Give me a over 40.5 for Colts Packers.
For my second bet, I'm trying to get the number 49. I'm going to go with over 49 in the Bills Dolphins game. I think this game is going to be high scoring. We've seen that Josh Allen is very good against this Dolphins defense. 11-1 against the team overall. He averages, I think, 250 passing yards, 50 yards on the ground. I think that's going to continue for him. I think they're going to score points in the Dolphins offense. They struggled in the first half in week one. I think they figured it out in the second half. I think they're going to continue to score the ball. I think the Bills cover the 2.5, but I think this game is going to go over 49.
Sticking in that game, my final best bet is going to be the Dolphins minus 2.5 against the Bills. For every reason that I said earlier on, I think we see a much improved offense in game 2 for the Finns. I think they're going to be able to torch a weak Bills secondary, and I think they're able to run the ball similar to how the Cardinals did, just at a much higher level. And the Bills, I think they're going to have to run the ball. Josh Allen's going to be under pressure all night. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball against a tough Miami defense, and I think Miami gets the win at 2.5.
For my final best bet, I'm going to go with Texans. Is it -7 in this one? We saw the Bears offense struggle a lot last week. Did not get a touchdown against the Titans defense. Relied on their defense to get it done for them. You're not going to be able to rely on your defense to score against the Houston Texans. Maybe you get a special teams touchdown, but CJ Stroud really doesn't throw the ball to the other team. I trust him to take care of the ball. I think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit. Not greatly. This Bears defense is good against the run, but they're going to have to play the run. CJ Stroud's going to be able to pick apart a little bit of this defense, and I just don't trust the Bears to score. So I'm going to go with Texans -7.
Okay, so that will about do it for this episode of the Engage 8 pod. We will be back next week to recap all of these NFL games, uploading on either Monday or Tuesday of next week, so stay looking out for that. In the meantime, you can hit all those links in our description for our TikTok, Spotify, Twitter, and all that good stuff, and we will see everybody in the next one.